how harder or easier for you was to play some of the most controversial couples in history.
In light of the events of the last 12 months, perhaps I have more to reflect on than most.
Hi, how are you? Dominique, Olivia?
Hello.
Good, thanks.
We're good, thank you.
Well, so thank you so much for talking to me. And I wanted to start by asking you, I know that by itself, playing a character that's actually a real person, it seems hard, but how harder or easier for you was to play some of the most controversial couples in history?
It was exciting because it's the first time I've ever played someone who's still alive, and so your references and your resources are huge. You know, there's so much material on certainly Charles that your research is made quite easy. You can look at so much. As for them being one of the most controversial characters in history, what's great about that is, in a way, at the time they were the villains in this drama where a great fairy tale had come to an end. That the most famous, most watched wedding of all time, I think, ended in divorce. I think the press and the public were keen for a villain. They were keen to blame somebody, and that blame was very much on Camilla and Charles as well. So what was interesting was having the benefit of hindsight and 20 years, and in some way being able to show what it was like for them and the humanity behind these sort of storybook villains.
And also, that Camilla's life was broken at that time by what happened, that she lost her marriage and her home and her privacy, but she had no protection. She didn't have a security man, and people were crowding outside her house, and she'd lost everything at that time. I think people probably hadn't seen that side of this story, that actually there was no script, there was no rule book for how to move on from this terrible situation where the future monarch wanted to marry a divorced woman and retain his crown. That hadn't happened before, as we know from previous series.
And, I wanted to dwell a little bit more on that by the thing you said about they're not villains, precisely. And I think this season portrays exactly what they are. I mean, they're humans with flaws and wins, and just in a very morally gray area. So did your perception of them and the royalty shifted after playing them?
Very much, yeah, very much so. You saw these public figures, these icons, and you get to peer behind them and see not only that they're human, obviously, but that they are rather wonderful humans. I think particularly Camilla, that you discover behind this icon of a villain, there is a very warm, generous personality.
And someone who she was goaded and taunted, but she's never risen. She's never been vindictive or given her side of the story. And that takes tremendous restraint and dignity, which I don't think I would have in her situation.
Right,
I'd
so
want to
thank
cut
you.
off a few heads if I could.
Yeah, right. So thank you so much for talking to me, and congratulations on the season, and sending you love from your fans in Mexico.
Thank you.
Gracias.
How did it come to this?